A far-right rally is about to get underway in central London. Much of America is mourning the assassination of the right-wing, some would say far-right activist and podcaster Charlie Kirk, with a mixture of grief and rage. Is this the beginning of a new season of political violence and revenge? Yes, autumn is here, the season of wet leaves and shorter days. But in Downing Street, winter has come early. This time last week, we were asking why Keir Starmer had stood by Angela Rayner, even as more and more of his own MPs were asking why she was still in the job. Fast forward to Wednesday this week and hit repeat. This time with Peter Mandelson, a.k.a. the Prince of Darkness, all courtesy of Donald Trump, Sneaky Pete. Even as emails were circulating in Number 10 illustrating that Mandelson was staying in Jeffrey Epstein's lavish properties in Paris and New York after his conviction as a paedophile and calling that conviction unfair, the Prime Minister was preparing to defend his ambassador in the Commons.
The ambassador has repeatedly expressed his deep regret for his association with him. He's right to do so. I have confidence in him, and he's playing an important role in the UK-US relationship.
And this was the Prime Minister in happier times in February when he held a drinks reception at the British ambassador's residence in Washington.
There's a real buzz around Washington right now. You can sense that there's a new leader in town, that he's a true one-off, a pioneer in business and in politics. Many people love him. Others love to hate him. But to us, he's just Peter. Peter is the right person to help us work with President Trump and to take this special relationship from strength to strength.
It was a good joke at the time, but the laughs have dried up. To rephrase an old question, what did the Prime Minister not know and when did he not know it? And why? Only 12 days ago, in a distant era, Starmer announced a reset of his team at Number 10. How's that been going? The Labour Party used to pride itself on not indulging in the regicide that became the Tories' favourite blood sport. But is that about to change? The mood at Number 10 is indeed funereal. The mood on the backbenches is livid. And the Prime Minister is accused of being cocooned in his own bubble. One head with a target on it is Morgan McSweeney, the architect of Starmer's election victory, now often accused increasingly of being the architect of his faltering administration. Fair? Let's find out. And my first guest this morning is David Yelland, the co-host of When It Hits the Fan podcast and, of course, former editor of The Sun. Good morning, David. How are you?
Good morning, Matt. I'm very well. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How much of a disaster is this for Starmer?
Well, it's moving very fast, and I'm beginning to think that it is a fan hitter that he is going to be lucky to escape. Even in, you're starting to see the word funereal. You just use that word used all over the place. I think for Morgan McSweeney, the writing is on the wall, and that may be unfair, but I think that is where we are, and I can explain that if you want.
Yeah, please do. I mean, just people may have heard his name, but tell us about his role and how important he is to Keir Starmer, Morgan McSweeney.
I mean, he is effectively the PM's right-hand man. He runs Downing Street. Now, a lot of people will say, why do you always go for the advisors? Why do people like you and I in the media always go to the advisors? And that's because the advisors always go before the top man or woman. That's just, the inevitable. But there are so many structural problems in Downing Street. They have completely lost control of the narrative on this story in a way that I haven't seen for some time in the US and the UK, and then you've got the president Trump coming here in the next few days. So it's all good. So if you look at the New York Times this morning, you can see Peter Mandelson's briefing. Peter Mandelson is believe it or not, a brilliant PR man. Now he continually gets himself into messes, but he's also brilliant. He's a combination of things which makes him unique.
And that's quite a compliment coming from you.
He is not going quietly.
Right.
And he's going to take people with him, and it's a matter of who. If you look at Mark Landler, who is the guy that runs the New York Times in Europe, based here in London, he has a piece this morning in which you look at the language. Peter Mandelson says next week's tech deal, there's going to be this big tech announcement by Trump and Keir Starmer, is, quote, my pride and joy, my legacy. He says it's his legacy. Now, there's lots of things to talk about. One of them is this. Global Counsel, which is his PR firm, is briefing against him. They're saying, we are cutting ties with Peter Mandelson. We don't want, because of course they have a lot of other clients that maybe quite rightly wonder about whether they want to do business with somebody that's identified with Epstein. Of course. But the way the industry works, that is the high-end, public relations industries. You don't necessarily say who you talk to. And if you want, just today, we've seen AstraZeneca pull out of the UK. Now, if AstraZeneca or Merck or any other company wanted to talk to a single individual in the world about where Trump is, where the White House is, Peter Mandelson is that man.
So you're saying that he thinks he's more sinned against than sinning, and in that spirit, he might take people down with him.
I think in terms of UK politics, yes, he is clearly he is saying I'm more sinned against than sin. He's not using those words. He is saying I told the email cache went to Morgan McSweeney the night before Keir Starmer was at PMQs. Now I have to say, to defend the Downing Street apparatus, for Peter Mandelson to bung those emails over just a few hours before the Prime Minister stood up at noon is a bit much. It's a bit. I mean, they should have had them way before. In which case, of course, he wouldn't have been in the job. But the problem is that there are so many other errors that have been made in Downing Street, and I think there's a name that's never mentioned, and that's Sue Gray. Sue Gray is definitely, in my opinion, a woman more sinned against than sinning. And where would we be? Where would we be if that had not happened? I think that moment and the takeover and ousting of her by Morgan McSweeney and the people around him is, in the end, going to make this a one-term prime minister and maybe half a term. And that's sad. It's so sad and it's tragic. But I think that's where we're going to be.
But, I mean, just on Mandelson, the Prime Minister was very clear, and the people who've been speaking on his behalf, on various radio shows, surrogates, ministers have also been clear. Mandelson was a risk. We knew he was a risk, but we thought that his talents and his connections and his charm and his diplomatic know-how, would be worth taking the risk. It turns out that that calculation was wrong. I mean, but was that a fair calculation at the time? Given the fact that Trump was in office, he was mercurial, they needed someone who could sort of could tweak him and charm him and get the trade deal across the line, which arguably Peter Mandelson did help to do.
Yes. I mean, there's a lot to say there. The first thing is there'll be lots of women listening to this that think, hang on a minute, what about what Mandelson actually said in those emails about the women that were, so we must reflect on the fact that it is disgraceful what he said. He was enabling and forgiving of something that is unforgivable. And that is very important. As far as the spin is going on at the moment, sorry, just ask me that. Do you think they were? Can you understand why they put him in that position in the first place? I mean, they had a perfectly good ambassador in Karen Pierce, who wanted to stay on. She got on very well with Trump. They got rid of her. They put Peter Mandelson in. Was that what was the thinking behind that decision, and was it right? Like you, I spent a lot of my career in America, and the problem with this job is, look, he was out of control. Peter Mandelson is always out of control. He gave an interview to Harry Cole of my old paper, The Sun, this week, which was scheduled. Why on earth is the British ambassador in Washington giving these He gives interviews every week. He comes out of the residence and rolls his window down and talks to journalists as he leaves the residence. Now, you don't do that if you're an FCO, a normal ambassador. You never speak to the press except on behalf of the country. They took it's all because of Trump. All the things we're seeing going wrong many of things, in my opinion, that we're seeing going wrong in the world, and there are also lots and lots, are as a result of the world recalibrating to deal with Trump. And that's what Keir Starmer had to do. If Trump hadn't been elected, there's no way in a million years that Peter Mandelson would ever have been our ambassador there. It was only because of Trump. And he did do, a good job in many ways. And had a trade deal. We're going to have this tech deal. By the way, Peter Mandelson's relationship with the West Coast, by which I mean Amazon, Google, Meta, all these people, That's his future. He may not come back to he may stay in the US.
And can Peter Mandelson damage Keir Starmer, who has humiliated him by sacking him?
Yes.
How?
I think if Peter Mandelson comes after you, no matter who you are in trouble. He is a phenomenally talented communicator.
Right.
He has huge energy, but
how would he specifically damage the Prime Minister who'd given him, his dream job?
Because he knows where all the bodies are buried, also, he remains very close to Tony Blair. I mean, their relationship is interesting. They disagree and so on, but they talk a lot and so on. So if the Blair era, if the powerhouse, it's still incredibly powerful in the country, internationally, and in the Labour Party, it moves against Keir Starmer, then he's in great trouble. But he's lost the back. But what's happening is that when you say to your children, put your listening ears on. Downing Street doesn't have listening ears. In the days of Tony Blair, and I remember it very well, there wasn't just Alistair Campbell, there was Angie Hunter, key person, and who would be constantly listening to the backbenchers, listening to editors, getting you in, a couple of glasses of wine. Yeah. What do you think?
No one's doing that at the moment.
No one's doing that. Morgan McSweeney doesn't have they hate everybody. They just think everyone's out to, they need...
let me just ask you a question. Sorry to interrupt. I mean, that's interesting, isn't it? Is that because Keir Starmer ultimately is not a very political animal? He was a lawyer. He was, head of the Crown Prosecution Service, and then he got into politics quite late in life. He doesn't seem to enjoy, the glad handing and backslapping and drink taking of politics as much as other people have done. And he was fighting a war inside the Labour Party to get, to lead that party. So most of his political career has been dealt with actually internal discipline. And that doesn't make for someone who's good at reaching out.
In my opinion, he is more than qualified to be a very, very good Prime Minister. It may possibly be over him. I don't know. I'm not going to go that far. But with a better team and better understanding. But he is used to delegating because he ran the CPS, and that's an organisation where you would delegate regionally into your staff. And I think he has faults there. And his choice of, I think, as I said before, the abandonment of Sue Gray. I think that was. Then there may have been Sue Gray may have had faults. I don't know the detail, but that moment for me, because that would never have happened under Tony Blair or Gordon Brown. They would never have abandoned. Because once you do that, you show how that you will basically abandon anybody. And she is, and would have been a much better listener. Than the sort of arrogant team. And you've got the entirely new communications team coming in, and by the time they get there, their house will burn down.
Right.
I mean,
so let me put you on the line then. How many months or years does Keir Starmer have left in one line?
I'm not a political journalist. I mean, he's elected for. I suspect what will happen.
What do you mean you're not? You were the editor of the Sun.
Well, I don't. I'm seeing political editors who I really respect, and political people who've been around a long time, like yourself, Nick Watts, people like that. People that they don't go around just saying stuff for the sake of it, saying that they're talking to people and saying by next summer he may have gone, and that I think the way British media politics works is these things become self-fulfilling prophecies.
Okay. And of course, we've got the Wales elections and the local elections next year. If they are dismal, which they may well be, then I think that can easily set off a very quick spiral, can't it? David Yelland, co-host of When It Hits the Fan podcast, former editor of The Sun. Thanks very much for coming on the programme. We're going to be talking about Keir Starmer and whether his days are numbered or not. Is that an overreaction? It may well be, after the break. The question to you on 0345 606 973 is this: how many more mistakes can Starmer make before his leadership comes into question? Call me. Many of you already are.